Hi everyone, and welcome to this session on creating a future of collective land ownership and responsibilities. My name is Kim Graham and I am a lead research coordinator at Shared Assets. Shared Assets is a UK-based organisation which works to reimagine what we can do with the land together and support the movement for land justice. And I'm delighted to be joined today by three speakers from across Europe to talk about this topic. I'm not going to spend too much time introducing them because the first thing they're about to do is talk about themselves and what their organizations do. But yeah, we're going to get into topics like after their work, we're going to think about how we can collectively learn from each other and really build this movement for more collective land ownership, which is something very close to my heart. Before we get started, I just wanted to remind everybody about the ORFC Code of Conduct. So we're hoping to have a space for a good discussion today, and there'll be time for questions and things like that. But please just be respectful and kind towards each other in the chat, or if you're engaging with the speakers through the Q&A. We can obviously have different opinions on things, but just, yeah, it would be great if we can all be respectful of each other. So yeah, I'm not going to waste too much time on me. What we're basically going to do is each of the speakers will have 5 minutes to talk about their work, and then we'll have a little time for Q&A. So please put your questions in the chat throughout, and we'll try and get to as many of them as we can. And then we're going to come back to the speakers briefly to delve into some, like I said, some of those topics around how we can sort of build international networks around this work. And then there'll be more time, hopefully, for some questions at the end. So yeah, I'm going to hand over first of all to Rasmus, who is the co-founder of Endelsgaard in Denmark, to tell us about their work. Just bear with me 1 minute while I get onto the PowerPoint. But yeah, over to you.
Well, thank you, and thank you for this wonderful invitation to talk a little bit about Endelsgaard and about our model. And we are a fairly new cooperative. We were founded in 2018 on a very simple and scalable idea. You should know that Denmark is probably the most industrialized agriculture farming country in the world. Over 60% of our total land is industrialized farming, and the ownership of the 60% of our land is actually only by men. That is, it's only 3% women who actually owns farming land in Denmark. So it's very unequal. When we started the model, there is a conventional ownership model that has been working and also very successful cooperative model in Denmark, and it's a typical model that where you pay, let's say, 1,000 euros or 100,000 euros for a share, and then it doesn't matter how many shares you have one vote. And we wanted to make a new scalable and more affordable cooperative model. So what we have now is that all members pay only 20 euros a month. But because we started out with 800 members the first month, but now we are 2,500 members, we get a lot of money in every month, around 40,000 euros a month at this moment. So that meant that we could lease the first farm with an option to buy, and then we could cash that farm and save up for the next, buy that cash, renovate it, and save up more money. And now we have 3 farms in only 4 years, and we are saving up to buy the 4th farm. I'm not sure who of my co-workers mailed in the slides, but maybe I think we should have the next slide if or how many slides there are. Maybe you could take the next slide, or maybe this is just the last. I don't really know, but let's just keep it there. I think what I want, the main key for this ownership is that we have to also worldwide, that there is a concentration of capital and of ownership. And by making it affordable or making new scalable ideas where we all pay a little bit, we can all become farm owners. So the underscore model, or our new cooperative idea, is that you only pay 20 euros a month, but you do it every month, and then you have one vote at the General Assembly. It doesn't matter if you buy more memberships, you will only have one vote. So this is the classical legal setup, however, with a new type of model where we pay in each month. This allows us to buy small farms, and we do market gardening, or we plant biodiversity forests. We grow a lot of vegetables, some flour as well, or grains and flour. But the most important thing in our discussion here today is this very simple idea that we can all become farm owners for a very small amount. The background for this idea was also maybe a little bit too interesting, but there were two reports out in Denmark, and as you say, I'm an old researcher. And the first report was that almost 1 million Danes, and we're 6.5 million in population size, almost 1 million Danes have a fitness card. They go to a fitness center and do workout. And we thought, why don't we just change that, because they pay exactly 20 euros a month. So if we can get 1 million people to join cooperative farming, we could actually buy up huge farms every month. So our vision or mission is actually just to get 1% of the Danish population to join us, because then we would buy up one farm every month, where we focus on plant-based food and plant and increase biodiversity and plant a lot of trees. So the one report, the other report that inspired us was by some of my former colleagues at Aarhus University in Jutland, and they calculated that it only costs 20 euros per person in Denmark in order to become fossil free. So what we've been trying to communicate to the public over and over again is that even though our climate and biodiversity crisis are so complex and seem almost to paralyze people, it's actually very easy to get engaged and take complete ownership and be very concrete in your climate and biodiversity action. It's only a matter of a membership, and it's only 20 euros. So the reason for our success, because I should say that farmland in Denmark is extremely expensive, is that there's something else that we harvest. And we spend a lot of time with the volunteers and the cooperation to harvest data. So we are very present on social media. We're on all social media platforms except TikTok. And we also spend a lot of time to break through in conventional media such as TV, radio, and newspapers. So I think that this is very important, because with such a naive and simple idea as this new form of cooperative, it needs to be it needs to get out there in the public sphere. But there is also what we realized is that at least for Denmark, but I think this is worldwide, we have left the country in the sense that we never actually visit the countryside anymore. However, if we look at the Danish public broadcasting TV channels, we can see that the most viewed programs are actually how to farm or how to do your garden. These are the programs in Denmark that has the most viewers. However, we are not in our own empirical world. We are never in the countryside anymore, or we actually don't engage in nature anymore. So making this this type of model that is very easy and accessible, where you get your ownership, democratic ownership of not just one farm but several farms, is a way to make that connection happen again. Then, as I mentioned just early on in the introduction, is that
sorry, Rasmus, we're going to need to move on in a sec, but I'll let you finish your quick point if you want to. But sorry.
But I think this is also something that is really important, is that because it's only 3% of the women in Denmark that owns farmland, is that when we made this organization, we can now see that it's actually, we have 60% of our members are actually women who are now farm owners. So the gender issue is also extremely important, and it's one of these gender issues that is not really, at least for Denmark or in the Nordic countries, actually never really been discussed when it comes to our land ownership. Thank you.
Hear me? Oh, there we go. Thanks very much, Rasmus. Yeah, that was really interesting. So now we're going to move on to hear from Petra, who's the coordinator of De Landgenoten in Belgium. Petra, are you ready to speak? I'll just bring up your slides. Oops.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Kim.
Thanks.
I don't see, oh yes, there are the slides. Yes, great to be here and great to hear the story from Denmark. I recognized a few things, like there's a lot of pressure in Flanders, where I'm working. Flanders is the northern part of Belgium. A lot of pressure on farmland, which means that farmland is very expensive at this moment. And very expensive, that would mean in general, on average, 65,000 euros per hectare. But we hear prices like 100,000 or even 120,000 euros per hectare, which is about 10 times or even 20 times as much as in France, for example. This is a picture of a lot of farmers that we are supporting with our system. And our system is, we buy farmland. We have a cooperative and we have a foundation, and we buy farmland through with the savings of a lot of citizens. We raised about 2 million euros since we started in 2014. And with this money, we bought about 46 hectares already. And these farmers, they grow vegetables, they grow fruit, they have goats, you see flowers. We also have a mixed farm. So it's very diverse in the type of farm that they lead. And what I found very interesting about this system is that we buy the land. We are together with a lot of people, with 1,500 shareholders. We are the owners of those farms. Or no, we're not the owners of the farms, we're the owners of the land. And what I found very important is that the farms are autonomous. We don't dictate anything. We just want them to grow in an organic way, a certified organic way. And we ask them to present, before they start, to present a profitable business plan. And then it's up to them. So it's not us dictating what they should grow or how they should go to the market. That's something they can decide themselves. And I think that is a very interesting and very important thing. Kim, you can show the next slide, please. So just a few things that I've mentioned already. So we started in 2014. one of the most difficult things for us is to convince people to join us and to invest, because we don't at this moment give any profits, financial profits. We have to convince them with the knowledge that they are building together with us the transition of agriculture in Flanders. There's only 1.5% of the farmland is organically grown at this moment. So that is very, very low. It's far below the European average. So that's the thing, how we try to convince people that they are making agriculture change little by little, and that together we work on biodiversity as well, above the ground, the soil, as in the soil itself. And in that way we are working on we are trying together to stop climate change, because it's we're putting carbon into the soil together. So it's a difficult story to bring in certainly this year, when everybody is counting his money because of energy prices. But anyhow, we did raise already 2 million euros, and we also have 200 unique donors every year. And because of the fact that the farms that we support are rather tiny, but very smart. With less than 50 hectares, we can support 15 organic farms and over 20 farmers. We also support local authorities in assigning public land for sustainable agriculture projects, but that's something that we will talk about later. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Petra. That's great. Yeah, really interesting to get onto some of the challenges already, but we will talk about that more in a bit. So now we're going to, now we're going to move on to our final speaker, Alice Martin-Prével, who's a project officer at Terre de Liens in France, to explain how their model works, and then we'll have a bit of time for Q&A. So over to you, Alice.
Thank you very much, Kim. Thank you, Petra. Thank you, Rasmus. Yeah, we're all organizations that have similar models. I feel quite fortunate for us in France, because indeed we have a slightly different agricultural situation. The land prices are not as high as what Petra describes in Flanders. We do have still average farms of 70 hectares, so it's not too big, but we are witnessing really the same issues that we see across Europe in terms of how this land, how farms are getting bigger, how land concentration is getting worse, how there is more and more corporate buying of farmland, how there is a lot of farmland disappearing due to urban sprawl, infrastructure development, and also how new farmers have trouble entering this pressured land market. They lack access to finance, to information on land that's available, and to the social connections that which provide them land opportunities. So in France, we created Terre de Liens 20 years ago to face some of these issues. What Terre de Liens does, we mobilize citizens on land issues. We support new entrants, future farmers. We acquire and manage farmland, just like Andersgaard and De Landgenoten. We rent this farmland to agroecological farmers, new entrants. And we also work on advising, mobilizing local authorities to expand our impact. So we do this through an original structure. We have a 3-pillar organization. On the one hand, associations, 19 regional associations across France. They're all independent organizations with their own governance, independent governmentally registered nonprofits who do the field work of welcoming the farmers that knock on our door, mobilizing the volunteers, trying to recruit new donors, shareholders, and working with local partners, including local governments. I personally work for the federation of these associations, which carries more transversal missions that all of the local Terre de Liens needs, for instance, carrying the advocacy, the training center, the resource center, some international projects. And how we manage the land is through our investment company called La Foncière. Through this company, that's the company that citizens can buy a share in. And that's how we collect the money to purchase the farms. And then the company performs all the landowner duties, like making the contracts with the farmers, managing the relationship with the farmer over time. And finally, just like Dylan Genoten, we also have a foundation to receive donations, and that can include in-kind donations. So we can also receive land that is donated to us. So Terre de Liens today, it's about 100 staff in those different structures that work across France. And we can go on to the next slide, Kim, which is just a nice picture to show what we hope to achieve. Basically, preserving farmland in agricultural use for a new generation, sometimes a collective like the one that you can see in the picture. We also make leases with farmers where we ensure that they practice organic agriculture so that the land and natural resources will be preserved over the long term. And by buying up the farmers with all the citizen money and power behind it, we want to decommodify farmland and make land everybody's business. And we can go on to the next slide where I have just a few results of what we've achieved in 20 years. We involved over 30,000 citizens, not all as active volunteers, but if you count volunteers, shareholders, donors, that's about the number of people that are currently engaged in Terre de Liens. We raised 124 million through savings, the shares in the company, or donations. And we are leasing land to about 450 farmers on 280 farms. You can see on the map, it's very tiny, but so the repartition of our farms in France, and that represents about 8,000 hectares dedicated to organic and peasant farming. And on top of the farmers that we rent the land to, every year we welcome nearly 2,000 new entrants who want to learn about their land rights, how they can access land opportunities. So we advise these farmers and provide a support service to them. And we also contracted partnerships with some local governments, local authorities, many informal collaborations with these authorities, but 90 contracted partnerships to advise them on their territorial food plans or how to manage the public land or other things of that nature, but we'll talk more about it. So yeah, in a nutshell, that's what Terre de Liens does. And I'm really happy to answer your questions. Now, I think we have a small Q&A.
Yeah, we do. Thanks, Alice. Thanks very much for that. Yeah, so I think there's been a few questions that have come in. So thank you everyone for putting those in. I think I'm going to just kind of merge the one for Petra and one for Rasmus, and then we'll go back to our speakers again to talk a bit more. So Rasmus, people were really interested in, I guess it's twofold. Firstly, what do the members get for their 20 euros a month, apart from their vote in the co-op? And also, are all of the co-op members actually farming, or if not, how many of them are, or how does that work? Like, who are the people who are actually farming the farms you've developed?
Yeah, so the 3 farms that we have so far is very young farmers, but all professional, organically farmed, and they're all professionals from the organic agricultural school in Denmark, and but all our farmers go a step further and want to be regenerative farmers, capture more carbon in the soil, plant more trees, increase biodiversity, and for all the farmland that we acquired so far, we take out around 50% and give it back to nature. So that's part of it. And then to the question, what do the members get out of it? Well, they get to be part of the solution. So we don't, our farmers don't give any discounts or anything like that. But right now we're building, for instance, an extra house where you can have different forms of gatherings, lectures, talks, meetings, social gatherings, and we do a lot of pop-up restaurants on the farms. But we actually tell our farmers to have the highest prices on the market. We're not interested in producing quantity, but high quality. And we constantly tell everyone that we want to be able to pay what it costs to grow organic food and do more for nature. Because the background for this is that we haven't actually paid, or conventional farming actually doesn't pay for what it costs. So the answer is always we actually just pay what it costs. Yes.
Great, thanks, Rasmus. And Petra, we just have a couple of questions for you quickly as well. So the first one is, can you expand a bit on how the farmers demonstrate that their farm is going to be ecologically regenerative? And the second one is, what's the difference between a donor and a member in
Yes.
organization?
We are a foundation and a cooperative, and when you buy a share, you become shareholder of the cooperative, which means that you get one vote in the General Assembly, and you have you are co-owner. On the contrary, when you make a donation, then you make a donation to the foundation of the Landgenoten, and then you just give the money, you get a fiscal receipt, and then you leave it up to us to decide on how we develop the organization. So those are two different things. Then about the land, how the farmers use the land and how they make proof of it. As I told, we ask them to be certified for organic farming, which is a basic requirement for us. And most of the farmers that are working on our land have had their education in Landwezen, which is an education center, which is more biodynamic than pure organic. So they focus a lot on soil quality, on getting life back into the soil if the soil is exhausted. We talk a lot with the farmers before they start working on our land, and we're not a controlling instance. We're not a control body. We don't go every year looking if they're doing it right. But we do have discussions on the team, or for example, when we make portraits of the farmers, and then we go into detail into what are you doing for example for the birds, or what are you doing for example for biodiversity, and that's how we try to feel how they work on it. But we're not controlling them, that's for sure. We trust them. Yeah.
Great, thank you, Petra. There's actually been a couple of questions that have come in for Alice as well, but I'm slightly conscious of time, so I might move us on to the next bit of the presentation and then try and come back to those questions later on. So Petra, we're actually going to stick with you because you're going to talk a little bit about the Access to Land Network, which is
Yes.
how some of our organizations are connected.
Yes, exactly. I can be short on it. Access to Land Network is a very, very interesting network, which is bringing together organizations like the Landgenoten, like Terre de Liens, like Shared Assets. And those are all organizations that are promoting agroecological farming and most of all access to land for that type of farming. Can you show the slide? I don't see the slide at this moment. Yes, thank you. So it started. The Access to Land Network started in 2012. So we've just had our 10th anniversary. And what is so great about the network is that together we are building knowledge and we are exchanging it and exchanging experience and practical tools. And that is really a great support in this sector in which we are making innovative choices. And we also are supporting new grassroots initiatives. So when people are starting, they can really get a guide in how to do this. And third of all, we are raising awareness about land issues, about land as a common among a lot of different publics, like citizens, consumers, farmers organizations, but also policymakers. If you would like to know more about it, you see the website accesstoland.eu. Yeah, I'm a fan of it. I'm really proud to be part of it. Thank you.
Thanks, Petra. And yeah, I also would recommend people check out lots of the resources on the website, especially the one that gives a bit of advice on interesting things that local authorities are doing around their farmland. I use that report very often, and it segues nicely into what Alice is about to talk about, which is some of the newer work that the Access to Land Network is thinking about doing with local authorities as well. So I'll hand over to you, Alice.
Yeah, indeed. I guess what we're talking about now, our own organizations, we have a lot to do in our countries, but we're aware that we have peers across Europe that are doing the same kind of work, and the network brings together these organizations to also deepen some of the areas of work that we develop nationally. And like I said, Terre de Liens, we've been working for some time with local authorities. Some other members of the network have been, and we decided now to formalize this knowledge in a European resource. So it's an online manual to engage with local authorities on land and to make them aware of the role that they can play for a better access to land. It's not quite ready yet. It will come online next month. If you're interested, don't hesitate to drop your email in the chat and I will send it to you. But I just wanted to introduce some of these concepts because indeed we can do a lot of work with shareholders, with our land companies, our cooperatives to buy up farms, but we will never buy all the farms in Europe. And so a way to expand our impact is to work with local governments, because they are themselves landowners. So I think about council farms or farmlands in the UK, about the land that belongs to social welfare centers in Belgium, or municipalities in Italy, where Rome, for instance, is one of the largest public landowners in Europe. And so this public land, at some point, it was acquired through citizens, through their taxes, their money, their donations to the community. And it's a good entry point because we should manage this public land responsibly, and it should be used to deliver public goods for the community, like food, like improving the climate. So what we can do and what we do with public owners is help them establish strategies for how to manage this land, help them manage it responsibly, and also discuss on how to invest to maintain increase these estates and how they can cooperate, share their practices with other public owners or ethical organizations, ethical landowner foundations like ours, so that they can improve the way that they manage public land. They also have a role to facilitate the local land systems. Local governments have legitimacy, knowledge of stakeholders to bring together people, convene different stakeholders, organize collective decision-making on land, and really also raise awareness of the citizens, provide data when they have it to fight the opacity of land systems, and even act as an intermediator between landowners and land users, new entrants that arrive, newcomers that arrive in an area can go see them and ask if there are land opportunities. So we advocate also that they play this facilitator role. And another way that they can act is also pretty obvious through the regulatory powers that they have. Depending on the countries, this includes planning processes, town planning, environmental preservation that they can implement, also administering some land rights or the land market. And depending on countries, I think about France and Spain, for instance, where local authorities, they have regulatory instruments that they can use to reclaim abandoned land, for instance, or to rearrange land plots to streamline the access to them, for instance. So that's another way that they can act. And then obviously by catalyzing policies through their own budgets, creating food land policies like a lot of governments do now across Europe, and also providing feedback to national legislators about the hurdles that they meet in promoting these things. So advocating themselves, using the institutional channels that they have to improve the environment for access to land in general. So this is a pretty dense way of introducing the different roles that local authorities can play as an owner, facilitator, or regulator. But it's a way to show that they're essential players in building collective land dynamics across Europe. So yeah, I think that's another stage for a lot of us in the network, and I'd be happy to share more to those who are interested in engaging with local authorities. I think maybe we have a few general questions if can be added back onto the stream too.
Yeah, thanks, Alice. Brilliant. Okay. Okay, I can see that there's still some questions coming in, and we will try and post a link in particular to the Access to Land handbook that I mentioned a little bit earlier on. I don't know whether Alice or actually no, we'll work that out shortly with the volunteers. But yes, there are some questions coming in still, and I encourage you to keep adding some in because we've still got sort of 15-20 minutes or so. I actually wanted to throw one into the mix. Kind of came up a little bit in most of what most of you were saying, but I wanted to ask about, in all of your different models, and given the current cost of living crisis and everything that's going on, how do questions of equity and justice play into your work and the models of land ownership, collective land ownership that you're promoting? So yeah, how are they particularly supporting groups of people who struggle to access land to do so? I don't know if anyone wants to jump in. I might, since you're on screen, Alice, I might go to you first.
Yeah, I'm actually really interested to hear what Rasmus has to say about this, because I really liked the way that you started introducing the gender issue. I have to say, in Terre de Liens, the way that we mostly work on equity issues is just that we work with new entrants, so people who have difficulties in accessing land and that come from non-family farming backgrounds, so that don't necessarily have the money to get a farm in the first place. But the number of Terre de Liens farmers that we have is not that much more. It's like about equivalent of the number of women who own farms in France. Like, we don't do much better. We do a little better, but we don't do much better. And the reason for that is that, when we have a farm and we have a matched person for this farm, we take the person that's there, and we don't necessarily have a policy to go look for, women or other marginalized community, people of color, or we don't do that yet. So it's an area of work that we would like to invest more in, but so far it's mostly like working with the people who are there and wanting the farm.
Rasmus.
Maybe,
Yeah,
yeah.
go ahead.
I think I'm sorry. This is also something that is recently new for me. I'm not a trained farmer, but a trained sociologist, and actually just a concerned citizen who got an idea with some other nice people. And but I think as a trained sociologist, what I think is a little bit too interesting is that when we look at the demographic in Denmark, and we can see that women vote more green, live more green, eat more vegetables, and men are the weak sex when it comes to this new paradigm. And so what we do, and I think it's very important that I said before that we harvest a lot of data, but we also try to harvest to stay within the terminology through the conventional media. So we try to participate as many public debates and try to build up social media, and we do so because we nobody actually knows about the real conditions when it comes to our farming land, at least not for Denmark. A lot of people think they know, but they don't. So, and to put that in perspective, we have our pig production in Denmark is the largest in the world. We have more pigs than we have people in Denmark. And we have, just as a byproduct of the pig production, one pig die every third second as a byproduct, around the clock, 24 hours a day. So we when it comes, because the industrial farming is so big in Denmark, we need to the awareness. We get more members. That's what I'm trying to aim at, by participating in the public debate, by being very active in that, and I think this is the way that we have to move forward. As you were saying before, we can't buy up all farms, but I actually think our mission should be to try to, and that's why we made this model that it's only 20 euros a month. If we look at the latest investigation in Denmark, we can now see that over 80% of the Danish population are very concerned about the climate and biodiversity crisis. However, when they're asked, what are you going to do about it, they all point to the state, that it's the politicians who should do something. And we can see, as any other country, that the politicians aren't really doing anything. So we also try in the public debate to say, okay, the politicians have left us, so now we're going to buy up the land ourselves. We're going to take charge, and we're going to take the full responsibility. And this seems to have some effect, that we push the media agenda a lot more, because what we're actually asking is a donation for 20 euros a month, because not that many people show up to the General Assembly. Some people work a little bit, volunteer on the farms. Some show up to the pop-up restaurants and all the nice things, but we it's like we're starting from scratch, and we really have to deliver a new form of knowledge. Yeah.
Thanks, both of you. Okay, so I'm going to come back to some of the audience questions coming in. First of all, I can see that quite a lot of people have been asking about, is there anything similar to what our speakers have been talking about in the UK? And probably the nearest equivalent we would have would be the ecological land co-op, which is buying up farms gradually, but nothing on the scale of Terlian, for example, just yet. And there's also other land trusts like the Soil Association Land Trust or the Biodynamic Land Trust, or the Scottish Farmland Trust as well, who are doing it kind of piecemeal. But yeah, I think we're still a bit behind in the UK in terms of these sort of models. So that's why it's so interesting to hear from all of our speakers across Europe today. Also, and actually, Rasmus, you just touched on it there now. There's a few questions about, do the farmers get paid, and how reliant are they on volunteers? So yeah, maybe I could get a response from all of you on how that works for your different organizations.
Yeah, would you want me to answer first? I mean, we the farmers to some extent get the farms for free, in the sense they pay a little bit of rent. It's a legal matter, and then we pay them a little bit to learn, the members who want to learn how to do some farming, and to tell about their farming practices. So it equals out almost. But I think most importantly, when we talk about ownership, and what I want to leave you with is that I think our model, it can be taken to every country. And if you're a group of people, you can all pay in a little bit very easily. And then when you grow, you immediately become, you don't have any loans, or you can expand a little bit. And that's the idea of the model, because and then it becomes more democratic, accessible. Yeah.
Thanks. Petra, do you want to jump in next to see how it works with you?
Yes, well, the farmers on our lands are, like I said, they are autonomous. They own the farm. They run their business the way they want it to run. So they're not getting paid by us. It's the other way around. They pay us a little amount for the rent for the land each year, and we keep that as low as possible. We keep that on the legal level. And like I said, we found it very important that they get value for their work. So we try to, when they start, we try to convince them to get a good business plan, and that's really important. That not only for themselves but also for us, because that will mean that they will keep on, they will continue their work on our land, and it will avoid a lot of changes in person, new people coming up to the same land. So they're independent people.
Thanks, Petra. And Alice, what about in France?
Yes, same as my colleagues here. The farmers rent the land from Terlian for a legal amount, which is relatively low. But I agree with what Rasmus said. The fact that they can start up farming without a loan, without debt, often it allows them to create very high value added models, short supply chains, processing the food, be able to diversify, organize farm visits or these things, which allows them to derive often a decent revenue from farming. And like Petra said, like that is also our interest, because we want them to be able to invest in the land over the long term as well. So we also support them, through our volunteers. If there is collective work to be done, for instance, on the farm, we can mobilize a few, like the volunteers from the region, to try to help. If there is a crisis, like hard hit due to a pest or something, we can organize some form of solidarity also for them. And so that's the power of having built a community to buy those farms, having raised the money. We can also appeal to that network, and that's really how we make land everybody's business. We change the relationship of people to the land in that way.
Great, thanks. So it sounds like in all of your models, and correct me if I'm wrong, I mean, there's sometimes is volunteer input, but the farmers themselves are kind of in charge and can generate a livelihood and everything like that. They wouldn't be able to not survive without the volunteers. Is that right? It's more about building the community around it. Is the sense I got. Yeah.
The volunteers are important to get the money together and to be able to buy the farmland. But after that, in fact, the volunteers are not crucial to the survival of the farm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, great. Okay, I'm just going to look at the questions again because we've still got some coming in. One that's come up is, have any of you had much political support for your projects, or would that more likely be a negative? I don't know if any of you have had that experience.
Well, maybe I can say a little bit that by coincidence, I studied with the former minister of the agriculture minister in Denmark. So we had quite a few talks, but the conventional organizations in Denmark, the industrial organizations within the farming industry has so much power and influence that that growing, let's say, or having market gardening or other types of systems is almost impossible. We do have, I think, the highest degree of organic food production in Denmark, between 8 to 10% of all our farmland. But when you look at it, it's only 9% that actually goes into feeding people. But the rest is just fodder for pigs. So it's very monocultural business, and so the politicians know it's an issue. But the problem is also, if you look at the Danish parliament, maybe it's the same in Belgium and France. But right now we only have maybe one person or maybe two at the most who's actually comes out of a farming tradition or a family of farmers. So, and they're usually conventional farmers. So we really don't share the same language. That's the problem.
Thanks, Rasmus. Petra?
Yes, maybe I can tell a bit about us. We had several little amounts of project money to get started and to develop. That was not from the Flemish government or not from the Belgian government. It was more like provinces or cities that would help us out. And only since 2 years now, we have some money from the Flemish government, but not from agriculture. It's from the Department of Social and Cultural Work that is giving us money to bring people together, to mobilize people, in fact, to support us and to raise awareness. But we don't get any money from what you would suspect agriculture or environmental government ministries. Yeah.
Interesting. That actually, I know, Alice, you might also have something to say on that, but I'm conscious of time, and also there's a bunch of questions coming in. So I'm sorry that we're probably not going to be able to get to all of them that people have posted. But Alice, I know you wanted to say one thing about the Access to Land Network, and then I'm going to pose one final question and maybe start with you. But Alice, go ahead on the thing you wanted to answer.
And just if I may, a word on the political question. We just were we were in Terdelian seen as we do get a significant amount of public financing now, but it's also been through demonstrating that we can do it. And initially we were more seen as disruptors or people who are not traditional agricultural land actors. And now we kind of have like partnerships with those traditional actors, the land agencies, etc. So it's been slow building, but after 20 years, we're more recognized as an expert in land. And regarding the Access to Land Network, I just wanted to answer one of the questions that I saw pop in, because it's an interesting one around how can other organizations join us. Like Petra said, it's a network of close friends. We know each other very well. And so the way that we integrate new members is by getting to know other organizations well. So we sometimes, we'll do a few projects together, or we'll invite you to our annual meetings, etc. And then there is indeed a membership process to be able to join us. But it's more of a internal process that we promote between our members, so that it can stay the agile network that it is.
Great, thanks. So yeah, I just had one. I'm going to try and merge a few questions into one for our some final thoughts from you all. But basically, the crux of it is, how do you think these different models that you're working with support people to create kind of a closer connection to the land in some way? Maybe people who have no experience of farming whatsoever. And I was thinking about this as well in the context of, I think someone brought up, with the cost of living crisis and everything. I know you made the point, Rasmus, where you want the farmers to charge like a high cost, but how can a lot of people afford that? So I'm just wondering if there's a link between that and maybe connecting people with the land in some way, even if they can't buy the food just now. So yeah, just any final thoughts from any of you on kind of connection to the land would be great.
Well, I think it's a little bit too interesting if the way we use social media now, or media in general. In Denmark, people spend now 7 hours and 16 minutes a day on average on the screen, and they're hardly not outside. 90% of the 24 hours a day they're inside. So, but they really want to get out. And they actually, and they're very anxious and nervous about the climate and biodiversity crisis. And I think the task, or at least that's the task that we're trying to solve, is to make farms that are nice and have some form of aesthetic as well, that you actually want to visit, and where you want to spend some money, and where you have a sense of ownership. And I think so therefore we try, at least, well, we're fairly new, but to make nice arrangements like this, eating in the field, but we have professional chefs preparing the food. And I think this is one way, but we're also struggling to get the message through. And I think the next couple of years, how we can advance in this discussion of how to that we get some form of connection again, and that we get an idea that, of course, I'm a farm owner. It doesn't necessarily mean that I farm, but of course everyone has to be a farm owner, or own a piece of nature or land, and I think that's the idea that we have to promote. Of course we are all farm owners, and I think it's also very important that we, this wonderful work that you're doing now with all to see all the many different models, we had to rethink it, and we couldn't look anywhere to what kind of models there actually were. But I think we need to put a lot of models. I don't think there's one model, but I think the more models that we develop, the more segments of the population will be more attractive to the idea of becoming a farm owner in different ways. Because I think that's the work that we have ahead.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks, Rasmus. Alice or Petra, quick final thoughts?
I can go ahead. I would say, through volunteers, we really have the idea of building the skills of citizens, that land systems don't be so exclusive, and that we can all take a part in how land is handled around us. So Often it's a topic that's difficult for people to appropriate, and what we do is training. We train our volunteers, and then they become the best ambassadors. And then for Christmas, we have campaigns where, we tell some of our volunteers, all right, you can gift, a share of land to your grandkid for this Christmas. And that's the snowball effect of that we try to have.
Great. And Petra?
Yeah, I can add a little bit. It's quite the same. What we try to do is we go with our shareholders, we visit our farms 2 or 3 times a year. Not all of them, but every year we do a few farm visits, and we show them, this is your impact, this is what you have been realizing with your money. But apart from that, I think in Flanders, food production is very invisible. And I think a lot of people don't realize that you need farmland for food production. And that is basic education that we're trying to do. Yeah.
Brilliant. Great. I think we're going to have to draw things to a close, even though they could have talked on for ages probably. But yeah, thank you so much, Petra, Alice and Rasmus. And thank you all for listening, everyone who's been tuning in from all over the world. Yeah, a lot of work to do, but I think collectively we've got a better shot at it. So thanks very much, everyone. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.